When you think of Allen Iverson, there's a lot of things that come to mind. His excellence on the court, his ridiculous handles, his crossovers, his fashion sense, his spectacular playoff run in 2001. On and off the court, he was one of a kind, a guy who had arguably the biggest cultural influence on the modern NBA game. In an era of giants, Iverson dominated, and his skills on the court need no further introduction. However, what doesn't get talked about much is his relationship with the NBA itself, namely his relationships with former Commissioner David Stern and his relationship with the referees. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to the point where the league was targeting Iverson on purpose. In this video, we're going to take a look at these topics and the circumstances surrounding Iverson's beef with the NBA. First, let's start with the refs. This is one of the lesser-known stories of Iverson's career, and it's something that probably should be talked about more. Let's take a look at an excerpt from the book Blowing the Whistle by former referee Tim Donaghy in 2007. For those who don't know, Donaghy was convicted for participating in that huge betting scandal. However, what he says here makes a lot of sense, considering what happened afterwards proved it to be true. Relationships between NBA players and referees were generally all over the board: love, hate, and everything in between. Some players, even very good ones, were targeted by referees and the league because they were too talented for their own good. This leads us to his piece on Allen Iverson. Donaghy said, "Allen Iverson provides a good example of a player who generated strong reactions, both positive and negative, within the core of NBA referees. For instance, veteran referee Steve Javie hated Allen Iverson and hated to give him a favorable call. If Javie was on the court when Iverson was playing, I would always bet on the other team to win or at least cover the spread. No matter how many times Iverson hit the floor, he rarely saw the foul line." At first, it might seem that this beef between Javie and Iverson was fabricated by Tim Donaghy. However, in that same year, the NBA fined Iverson $25,000 for his remarks about Steve Javie after the Nuggets lost to the Sixers. In regards to the fine, Iverson stated, "I thought that he was calling the game personal and he threw me out. His fuse is real short anyway, and I should have known that I couldn't say anything anyway. It's been something personal with me and him since I got in the league. This was just the perfect game for him to try and make me look bad." On top of this, Donaghy himself admitted to seeking revenge against Iverson for the way he confronted and acted towards the refs. A few months later, after Iverson got traded, in a game between Denver and Utah, Mehmet Okur knocked Iverson to the ground late in the game, but it resulted in a no call. In an interview on 60 Minutes, Donaghy was reffing this game, and apparently him and the refs wanted to, quote, teach him a lesson. With that being said, there were also other refs like Joey Crawford, the guy who threw Tim Duncan out of the game for laughing. Most players despised Crawford. However, Iverson was one of a few players who got along well with him. It was mainly because Crawford's grandson is a huge fan of him, and they would routinely be seen shaking hands, taking pictures, and talking to each other. Crawford would call the game more favorably in Iverson's favor. Regardless, the real issue here is that the refs basically called the game differently depending on their relationship with certain players. That's been speculated to happen across all major sports, but this was the first time in the NBA where it was confirmed that it happens. In the early 2000s, when the Sixers were making deep pushes into the playoffs, Iverson himself has stated numerous times that the refs were out to get him. But nobody believed him. Nobody really cared about what he was saying. And the perception of him at the time was that he was just crying wolf. And he's already getting a lot of free throws anyway. However, it wasn't until years later in 2007 where this was all revealed to be correct. So Iverson wasn't lying. Some refs were certainly out to get him. Now, the second part of this beef was directly between Iverson and David Stern himself. From when he entered the NBA as the #1 pick to his retirement in 2010, Stern and the NBA executives never viewed Iverson in a positive light. They did not like his image or the trends that he set in the NBA. During the 2000 offseason, Iverson recorded a rap single called 40 Bars. This would be immediately condemned by David Stern, and he did not want Iverson to release it as it did not conform to what he wanted the NBA's image to be. It's quite ironic because the NBA made millions upon millions of dollars off of Iverson's image to begin with, yet they used him as an example of how not to act. It was quite ironic indeed. In 2005, the NBA implemented a new dress code, becoming the first major sports league to control the way their players dressed up. The dress code would ban fashion and clothes that was associated with hip-hop culture during press interviews or sidelined injuries. That list included things like do-rags, large jewelry, and ripped jeans. Iverson was almost exclusively the reason for the league implementing this, as his fashion sense popularized this league-wide trend, and it was going in a direction that Stern did not like. In 2008, Iverson was not even invited to Team USA for the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, despite having one of the best seasons of his career. In the 2007-8 season, he was the best player on the Denver Nuggets, better than Melo, who did get invited to Team USA. The media cited the reasons for that was due to his lackluster performance in 2004. But a lot of other players from 04 got invited back, and Iverson had a great rapport with his teammates. In fact, Iverson was actually one of the better players on that 04 Olympic team that won bronze. The issue was, he didn't see eye to eye with the coaching staff. But by 2008, the entire coaching staff from 04 was overturned, so I feel like that's not a valid reason to exclude him. Perhaps the most disrespectful moment was at the end of his career. The 2009-10 season would be his final season in the NBA. Yet he had no fanfare. He got no tributes from the media. The NBA did not treat his retirement appropriately. This was a guy who changed the entire culture of the NBA, and in his prime, he was arguably the most popular player since Michael Jordan. But it seemed like the NBA did not care whatsoever, and viewed Iverson as a burden and that his retirement was a relief. It wasn't just the NBA media either. On ESPN, right after Iverson retired, they created a poll on national television, asking fans what they remember the most about Iverson. The first option was a Hall of Famer. The second option was his practice rant. That ended up being the choice that most people selected. It is kinda sad though, to have one of the most legendary players of all time be remembered for this practice rant. There's so much else to his legacy than just this. This continued with articles from NBA.com as well. They would rank the top 10 players from the 2000s decade, and Iverson didn't even get into the top 10, nor was he even given an honorable mention. Maybe it was arguable and he barely missed it, but still, it was a highly controversial list when it came out, and fans believed it was another knock on Iverson's legacy. From his quiet retirement to all the disrespect throughout the years, a lot of channels and sports media created a mockery out of one of the best players of his generation. At the end of the day, was Iverson the perfect player or perfect person? No, of course not. A lot of fans believe that he was indeed a polarizing player, but the polarization was created by the media itself. What the media does not talk about is that Iverson was an incredible teammate, a great leader who all of his teammates respected because he had their backs. He was never ejected for any flagrant fouls. Every time a former player was asked about Iverson, they only had good things to say about him.
In AI as a competitor, he drove me to be as more obsessive about the game because I had to figure out how to solve that problem, And I told him when I saw him here this weekend, I said, man, you don't realize how much you pushed me, and I don't think people nowadays realize how great you were as a player.
His peers, his contemporaries, they all viewed Iverson in a positive light. He would routinely give back to the neighborhoods of Philly and always spend time with kids at his camps. So despite all the media criticism, believe it or not, Iverson's a great guy. Yes, he did have his controversial moments, but for the most part, a lot of the negativity was fabricated to hurt his image. While he was widely disparaged by the media, he was also widely respected among the NBA players. No players have ever said anything bad about him. And that's all, folks. That sums up the circumstances of Iverson, the referees, and David Stern. Even after an amazing career, Iverson's life has been quite rocky. But I hope this video gave you a better idea of how he was treated during his career. It was a catastrophe. He was the NBA's cash cow and his image made them millions of dollars. But his image was also disrespected by the same people who benefited from it. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about Allen Iverson and this whole entire situation. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace.